In this video, we're going to talk about Microsoft, which recently had a layoff of 2,000 employees. We're going to go through some a bit analysis in this article right here. Tech employees are getting the message. Playtime's over. Many people in the tech industry are losing their jobs. We're going to go through this in a lot of detail with Microsoft, with many other companies, as you can see here. Microsoft let off 2,000 employees, and they're making their work environments more and more intense. But let's go through some clips of people dealing with layoffs and the job search in general here.
6 interviews, a in-depth project, and a project presentation. I did not get the job. Good for whoever got it. I guess I'll get him next time.
That was a very short clip there, right? So I just want to go through it in a bit of detail. So what she actually said here is that she went through an interview process. It had 6 interviews. It had a project to do as part of like the interview process, whether that project was like a case study test she did during the interview process or something she'd do at home for a few days. And the whole point with a lot of these things is that you have these long application processes when you do have a layoff, right? You're working at somewhere like one of these big tech firms, like we can see here. We're going to go through this article in a moment. You're dealing with a layoff, you're leaving Microsoft, top companies, you're struggling to find another job, and then you're going through these long drawn out interview processes, right? And then it can be quite difficult. What I realized is then you see people posting online and they're going, oh, it's so hard to get a job. The interview process is long. I agree the interview process is long. I did like 9 interviews to get my job at Goldman Sachs, over 5 interviews to get my job at Morgan Stanley, and many interviews and long drawn out processes to work at HSBC too. But what you need to realize is that firstly, the job market is more competitive. There are more people out of work. Companies are being more selective with who they hire. So it is going to be a bit more difficult throughout that process. But also another thing I've noticed is many people, they'll fail the interview process and then they'll just blame the process. They'll go, oh, it's too many interviews. Oh, I just got burnt out with the interview, or they just didn't acknowledge my worth. They don't deserve to hire me, right? They don't deserve me at my best if they're not going to hire me at my worst type of attitude, like it's in the dating market or something. But the whole point is each interview process, you should take that as an opportunity to learn. Like, what can you learn? What did you do right? What did you do wrong? And of course, they can obviously decide not to hire you because they don't like something about your personality and it has nothing to do with your ability to do the job. But there's always learning moments, and I've worked with this with my clients. If you're new to the channel and you're watching this around this time period, there is a Black Friday sale that's on right now between the 24th of November and 8th of December. And what I do is I help my clients with a lot of these interview processes. And just to explain a specific example without naming a client I've been working with, is that what ends up happening is sometimes you go through these interview processes and you make one small mistake and you think, okay, well, I just said one thing that was wrong, but that doesn't make sense that they'd reject me, 2-3 rounds into the interview. But the whole thing comes down to effective preparation. It comes down to looking out for questions that could come up in and around, not just the tasks that you're asked to do, but your broader knowledge, your broader understanding of how the team fits within the department and with the other business stakeholders and clients and things like that. Lots of people don't think about the broad picture, then they get caught out on a question or a few questions, and then they don't move forward in the interview process. Now, I know those job rejections do come because I know what we're going to see in the comments. People will say, oh, you're judging her, or yeah, well, it's not nice to get rejected for a job. I've been rejected many times. I've applied many times, reached final round, and then everyone likes me. I remember interviewing, for example, at a private equity firm around the time I think I was leaving HSBC to work at Goldman Sachs. Yeah, between that time period, I'd had many successful final round interviews. And at one private equity firm, the guy working there just didn't like me, who was the senior manager. Everyone else liked me. I passed a case study. I did like 2 to 3 interviews with different people. No one has any complaints. And then right at the last minute in the final round, this guy interviewing me, who's the head of the team, just started grilling me with questions. Well, what exactly did you do in that process when I was working at another bank, for example? And I'd go through it step by step, and he's like, you don't sound like you were that involved in it. Yeah, I don't think I want to hire you. And he would just do things like that, and it's like, well, I just explained what I did. I don't know what was actually ticking him off. I get the impression it was because I wasn't coming across super aggressive and leaning into his type of aggressive mentality, because I can come across a bit laid back sometimes, even though I like to be productive and do work. So that's something I couldn't control. But every interview process has things you can learn from. And as she's been through these 6 interviews, yeah, it might sound like, oh, it's a waste of time. I wasted hours preparing for this. But all those answers you can repeat next time. All those questions that come up and similar questions, you've basically done a practice exam under pressure in those interviews, so you can be better prepared for the next. I remember when I was interviewing with many hedge funds, many private equity firms over the span of, let's just say, 3 to 6 months, because I was looking for a good opportunity, perhaps outside of the major banks I worked at. I was thinking about working for like a smaller hedge fund or private equity firm where they might not be as well known, but the benefit there is that it has much higher bonuses and higher salaries, even though it does come with a bit of risk because they're less likely to protect employees. They're not like a big company that have all these employee protections when it comes to layoffs. If they don't like you one day, they'll just fire you. But if you're there and you're on good terms with them, you can make a lot of money. When I was interviewing for them, by the time I was interviewing at the 5th hedge fund, the 3rd or 4th private equity firm, I was used to what questions were going to come up. Yeah, they could be difficult and come up with a complete curveball type of question, but these are the things you got to see things as a learning process. What I would do is reflect as objectively as possible after these interviews. What were the learning points? Yeah, maybe I should have answered that better. Maybe they asked me, for example, if you're familiar with trading, there's different type of trading. One type of trading is short selling, where you're effectively placing a bet that the price of a stock is going to go down and not go up. And then I'd read around that topic. So next time it came up, I was aware of some of those hedge funds and how they use that in their investment strategy. These are the type of things to really think about rather than just, post a pity party on TikTok like this woman here.
Literally anything I could think of. But I'm seeing some people who are like, I graduated a year ago, still can't find a job. Okay. I'm going to say something controversial, but I don't think it should be. You, at our age and in this market and in our society, we don't have the luxury of going into what we want to, what we would specialize in, okay? My first job out of college was working at an aviation company. Like, that was not my dream. That's not what I wanted to be doing, but it was a job. It was a good job, and I knew that if I could get a job, it would be easier to get another job, which is what happened, and now I have a different job. But a lot of people are very reluctant to stray outside of the box they think they should be in, and you have to.
I did just get another job rejection after 5 interviews. Sorry to cry online.
Before we go through another pity party here, let's go through the slightly better looking woman just before. So the whole point here is, what she's saying here is that if you are going through a difficult job market, and we are in a difficult job market right now, I think it could get better after 2 to 3 years, or at least 2 years. I would say what she's saying is you have to adapt or give up. There's only 2 choices, right? Particularly if you're coming out of maybe your college or university, or you're looking to pivot industry or switch your job title slightly in terms of what you're doing in your own industry. You have to adapt, right? And it's up to you. It's kind of your choice. Are you going to adapt or are you going to give up, right? And there's so many people who are just giving up, posting those crying TikToks. There's guys who are dropping out of society, as we see, and I understand why that would be, as I've covered in other videos. I won't go through it now. But it's end of the time, there has that meme. I'm sure you're aware of that meme. Hard times create strong men, and we are kind of in hard times right now. And it's up to you. Like, to what extent are you willing to tolerate those hard times, and to what extent are you going to give up? And I do see people right now. There's not only a collapse of the middle class and society kind of splitting into the rich and the poor, or the winners and the losers. But I see this actually in real life, where people I know some people are making lots of money, whether it's through their side hustle online, through a high-paying corporate job, through making some investments, and people are just kind of given up. They'll stick with these low-paying, dead-end jobs. They're not actually thinking outside the box or even trying to take a risk. And this is the thing. There's a good analysis about this, where people in the middle are stuck. They're stuck in maybe a job they don't like. They're worried about a layoff. They're not willing to take the risks that someone rich can, because they've got that enough money to make those risks. Or someone who's poor, who has nothing to lose, will be willing to make the risks. It's really people in the middle who are stuck. They're a slave to their job, their mortgage, their miserable marriage. And that's what I encourage you to do throughout my videos, is that what you want to do is, if you're a man and your society you might be a bit of an outcast, for example, maybe you're single, you don't have the best job, you've got greater capacity to take risks. And it doesn't have to be over the top crazy risks, but it could be like, okay, yeah, I will set up that side business. Yeah, I will take a risk to pivot my career, and I can always go back to what I currently do if I need in the future. These are the type of things. Really try to think outside the box. Don't let people kind of use you and get you to play it safe when playing it safe clearly isn't working. And the other thing is, there's a lot of people who just end up feeling sorry for themselves a lot, right? And I see this sometimes in the comments. I see it sometimes on other channels like this, not just TikToks and women on TikTok, but it could be guys in comment sections of other videos I've seen on other channels, just throwing never-ending like pity parties, right? So just really think things through, right? If you stop feeling sorry for yourself, think about all the actions you could take, because I know so many people who, through no fault of their own necessarily, are in kind of difficult situations. You know, they might be had a high paying job, then they're dealing with a layoff out of nowhere. They've made some right decisions in terms of maybe their personal life, and then they end up with a breakup or something like that, and they didn't do anything wrong. Most people are dealing with some kind of unforeseen, very difficult circumstances right now. Maybe it's just a society thing, an economic thing, a spiritual thing. But it's just a reality. So rather than, you know, feeling upset about it, really think about what is the best action I can take in the circumstances I'm in, right? There's a Latin phrase, you've probably heard it, amor fati, AMORFATI. I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but it means love your fate, which means whatever your situation is or the scenario you're dealing with, just fully dive deep into it and make the best of it, right? Like life to a certain extent is, you know, 90% of how you react to the 10% of things that are happening. And the other thing I'd say is, like, listen, if she can make it happen, right, and she's kind of figured out a situation at work for her, even if she's taking side steps in other industries that might not be the main industry that she studied for at college or university, you should be able to make it work too, right? And think on your feet and use that initiative. And for example, she mentions this aviation company. You know, I've worked with clients actually that have worked in and around aviation industries, worked in airlines, looked at management roles there. And there's many different opportunities there. And it can be kind of, it depends on your personality again. It can be a fun, engaging place to work in because you're dealing with the kind of chaos of the airport environment. I know it's not for everyone, but it can work out well for some people in terms of, okay, well, I'm helping all these people with their travel plans. I'm managing a big team. I'm dealing with the chaos and helping, you know, a massive operation of millions of people moving through an airport on a like monthly basis operate efficiently. And there's easy ways to stack up wins there because you could do your own job but get involved in different elements around what you're doing. And the whole point is, like I keep coming back to, is finding the best set of circumstances that can work for you in your situation. Let's look at another clip here.
Have to.
I did just get another job rejection after 5 interviews. Sorry to cry online. Sorry I'm crying online, if that's okay with everyone. But this is just kind of what it is. This is what it is right now, and every single time. It's like between me and one candidate, and then the other candidate gets chosen, and it's like, they're like, we loved you, you were great. Yay. And then it's someone else. And this is the 5th time this has happened to me, and I'm feeling literally psychotic. I don't know what the universe is trying to tell me, and I don't know why things are not working out. It's very frustrating. This one was particularly awful because they made me wait a week to schedule this phone call with HR, and I was like, oh my god, a phone call with HR after 4 interviews. I'm getting offered a job, obviously. I'm obviously getting offered a job. And it was a rejection. Like, literally. I literally recorded it because I thought that it was good enough. I thought I was gonna be getting. It's okay. Okay, I've taken a deep breath. What's meant for me will come to me. I feel fucking crazy, but this is the kind of the truth of what it feels like to be job searching right now, and to be job searching for legitimately 10 months. It's just a numbers game, and it's luck, and it's if you have a job right now, be so happy.
And I think we have to come to the conclusion, like, to what extent can a woman actually deal with rejection, Because obviously men get rejected from jobs all the time, but you don't see it online as much as you do see it for women. And like I say, I've dealt with job rejection. She mentioned having a job rejection after 4 or 5 interviews. And the thing is, it's like when you're doing these interview processes, you have to see it like speed dating, right? Where you're kind of going there, you're emotionally detached, you're seeing if it could be a good fit for you and the company, and then you pick up the learning points and you move up for the next interview. You line up as many as possible. People use a lot of these red pill terminologies like spinning plates, having multiple options, having leverage and options, having multiple women. When you go into interview processes, in a sense, it's a pump and dump. It's like a one night stand. It's in a sense where you're kind of going there to use them for that opportunity, use it as a learning opportunity, try and get the job. And even if you stay there, it'll be like a short-term casual relationship for 2 to 5 years maximum, unless you're getting promoted quite quickly, where you might just work there for a while and then move on to a better opportunity for higher pay. It's just this kind of transactional relationship dynamic you see within the dating market is reflected in the work environment too. And then the thing is, what she's saying here is kind of interesting because it links to earlier videos I mentioned. Made about one or two were about job hugging, which means people are hugging their job, staying in a job they don't like because they know how rough it is in the job market to find a new opportunity. So they'll just stick it out until they can leave. And there's another term which is similar to that called quiet cracking, where people are getting burnt out in the same role because they can't move forward in their life, they're not making enough money, they can't switch to a better job, so they're just cracking up and getting burnt out in their job. I think that's kind of real, right? Many people with jobs, and many cases like we see with her, people who don't have a job, they're cracking up, they're really struggling right now, right? And at the end of the day, it becomes, again, like the dating market. It's like a numbers game. How many jobs can you apply for? Can you keep up with the volume of applying for many jobs? Are you going to get lazy? Are you going to get demotivated, demoralized, over emotional like she is? Or are you going to keep going? So if it does become a war of attrition, like being in the trenches, seeing who can survive the longest, applying for a job can feel like a Fortnite battle royal, and you're just basically trying to survive and be the last survivor. There's 70 people applying for a job, and you're trying to be the last guy there, and you might be the last 2, and you try your best to stick it out until you get a job offer. And that's what it happens. There will be people who are giving up. And if you look at the tech industry, for example, but this applies to finance and other industries, you can say to a certain extent the industries, at least in the shorter term, are shrinking. They're hiring less people, they're outsourcing jobs to India or Eastern Europe, other countries outside the West. They're implementing more AI, some automation, things like that. Even you can see it in the retail sector, in the fast food sector, with McDonald's replacing, their staff with the automated checkouts, things like that, automated ordering systems. Restaurants having less waiters and waitresses because you can order using the QR code in your phone. It's a very interesting dynamic in terms of things are shrinking and who's going to stay in the industry, who's going to get pushed out. So if you've got 2 people, let's just say they keep applying for tech jobs and one person gives up first and they say, okay, well, I can't get a tech job, I'll just go to another industry, go do, I don't know, some kind of restaurant type of job, become a waiter or waitress. And the other person who's really committed, who is really the strong man in hard times, he's going to keep applying, keep pushing forward till he gets the opportunity he looking for and push forward with his career and stay in his industry. And this is the difficult, like I say, reality people are dealing with. What you're going to do if you're in a situation like her and other videos I've reacted to where someone can't find a job for 10 months, what are you going to do? Are you going to give up? Are you just going to say, oh, I'm never going to make it in my industry? Or are you going to push forward? And this is what people are realizing in the tech sector particularly, but in other industries too. Here it says tech employees are finally getting the message, playtime is over. So what it's trying to say is that, we're getting all these layoffs across tech. It says here a trifecta of economics, low demand, recessionary environment, the lockdown era realities and political pressures is changing tech culture, right? Big tech and Silicon Valley startups and companies are pushing to do more with less, having less employees, getting more work done, and they're not shy about that strategy. Managers aren't shy about doing layoffs, threatening people's jobs and things like that. So it's quite interesting, the dynamic here. I just want to focus on that in a bit of detail. Political pressure, what we actually are referring to here, this could be the tariffs that are increasing the cost of hardware and exports and imports, based on, you know, America's Trump's policies right now. It could be a lot of the political pressure that we see, you know, pulling back on DEI. A lot of the woke agenda and censorship is kind of being done away with. And then also many companies, as I've covered in other videos, they overhired during the lockdown phase. Around 2022, there was a lot of overhiring. Then 2023, a lot of layoffs. Because, I mean, the whole situation in 2020 kind of ruined everything. It definitely accelerated all the negative trends that were going on, right? More and more economic instability, less and less middle class, less healthy relationships, less people having kids, buying houses, less kind of escapism, because people got burnt out with the escapism. Now people can't be distracted as much as they could during the pandemic, because people have to live in that reality of kind of, you know, all those things you may have wasted your time with or spent your time on, TV shows, Spotify, listening to music and things like that. A lot of those things actually went down. What's interesting is because people got burnt out with those things, they realize these distractions don't replace a fulfilling life, whether it's a healthy relationship or a stable country with an honest government, or having the freedom of speech, spending time in nature. So what's interesting is how so many things have changed since the lockdown session, let's just say it like that. So it's not just companies realizing, oh, we don't actually need all these people. There's lots of people saying, oh, I don't really want to be in an office. So there's so many dynamics going on here. Let's continue to move on. Here it says here, across tech, the tables have turned for employees. There's more performance pressure. There's more focus on efficiency and intensity, which is replacing perks and pampering. There's lots of layoffs going on. Sweeping layoffs have become the norm in the industry. And they're sweeping layoffs in an industry that had previously enjoyed job security. And this is what I'd encourage you to do. I remember a comment I got on my YouTube channel a few months back, and someone says, oh, I work in tech, I'm getting paid over 200K. Why the F would I want to live a simple minimalist life? And who knows where he is now, if he's still working that 200K job, or he's dealing with a layoff and he's struggling to get anywhere close to that salary. He might have to have a 50% salary dip and take anything he can get, particularly if he's in a high cost of living area where a lot of these tech companies are based, and he's paying high rent. He must be like, okay, I need to quickly get into the job market again, and I'm not going to buy all these expensive, pointless things that I don't really need, because I was trying to have lifestyle inflation, which would be living way beyond your means and thinking whatever job you have is going to last forever when it's not. This is a reality for many people, and it's impacting people in different dynamics. There's people who are extremely experienced, maybe in their 40s or 50s, they're dealing with a layoff, extremely hard to find a job. Then they might have to go from a high-paying finance job to a lower-paying generic office job. So it can be kind of a really humbling moment for them, where people have to do anything they can do to survive. And this is the thing, not getting too caught up in just the hype of the social status. I'd recommend, as I always say, being detached from social status. You want to set yourself up for freedom. You really have a choice there. Do you want the social status or do you want the freedom? And then when you have the freedom, then yeah, I mean, when I say freedom, I mean freedom through investing, through being more of a minimalist, controlling your time and having side hustles and things like that. That freedom is worth way more than social status, because there are moments that maybe your investments are doing well. Maybe you're kind of looking out for that one item you want, the one expensive watch you want, or the one expensive, maybe it's a gaming setup you want that cost a couple $1,000s. It could be, you know, anything. The whole point is, when it's time to make that type of social status upgrade that you want, maybe it's expensive tailored suits, then you can do those one or two things, but you've maximized your freedom. You're not trapped in a job. You're not trapped going to a job every day to pay for an overpriced large house you don't need with a massive mortgage payment, and interest rates are going up and you're struggling to pay for it, and you're stressing every day about how you're going to survive. That's the situation a lot more people are in than you realize, because they're living beyond their means. They're trying to live the boomer lifestyle in a completely dysfunctional economy. Here it says here, the pressure to dominate AI has increased intense competition. Companies use technology to do more with fewer workers. They're already hard driving workplaces have become even harder. And this is the difficult reality. A lot of these places are quite intense. I know I joke all the time on the channel, which I think is a valid point, that there is a lot of offices where the workplace is daycare, office is daycare for adults. There's lots of people not working, but there are a lot of environments where people are working hard. That I've worked in on the trading floor with traders, when it comes to people who are working in coding and software engineers, things like that, some of my clients. Of course, there are hard-working environments. And when these are hyper-competitive, high stress, lots of money's on the line, when you add in the element of, on top of that risk, you're dealing with a constant pressure in the back of your mind of dealing with the layoff. You have to work harder. Even your manager won't say it directly. You're just going to end up staying later, coming into work earlier, because you're just thinking, oh my God, if I lose my job, what am I going to do? How am I going to find my next opportunity? The pressure, on top of all the other social, economic, political pressures, is just getting too much for people to really process on a daily basis. Here it says here, for years, fierce competition for tech workers meant that companies spoiled employees with lots of salaries, perks, in-office massages, food cooked by fancy chefs. And I remember when I was working at an American investment bank, they were always worried about losing good talent, not to other banks, but to Google, to Amazon, to other big tech firms, you know, Apple, things like that, because that became the cool place to work at, right? So after someone graduated from Harvard or Stanford, Oxford or Cambridge, yeah, they could go and work in a government think tank, a major bank. But part of that demand, these banks are worried about, oh, all these people are going to go into tech, because tech has more of a casual work environment. People can wear what they want. You don't have to wear a stuffy suit like you have to do in finance. You don't have to, play along with certain social status things that can be a bit draining, right? You don't have to have all the same hobbies as everyone else, going on expensive skiing trips and things like that. In the tech industry, as you can see from the way Mark Zuckerberg dressed, or how Jeff Bezos conducts himself, people wear hoodies, they wear just track pants, and they maybe play video games, and they don't have to go and keep up appearances and buy an expensive Rolex. That's why some people prefer the tech industry. It's like, you can succeed, you can make a lot of money, you can do interesting technical work, and maybe do some sales work, depending on what it is. But you can just be more of a human, which is kind of ironic. It's the tech industry, but you can be more human there than you can maybe in the finance industry and others. So, and a lot of these places to attract that high quality talent, people who'd studied, quite prestigious degrees, they would offer a lot of these benefits. Oh, you can get massages, you can get expensive, fancy chefs cooking food. But it's something to always look out for, is why is that there? Of course, there's a lot of benefits that come with that, but as I mentioned, working at different American investment banks. I remember interviewing for a hedge fund that was meant to be some kind of environmentally friendly hedge fund. They were always talking about investing in the whole climate agenda and anything in relation to carbon credits. They were going to get super involved in that. And they had all these features in a fancy office. They had a yoga thing that they encouraged all employees to go through in the middle of the day. And bear in mind, when you have a hedge fund, they don't have massive offices. They have kind of a small, compact office, even though it is well made and well designed. It's like 1 or 2 floors maximum. It's not like a massive investment bank building. And they would have this lounge area with table tennis and football, that kind of like table football. And they had a chef there to cook breakfast for everyone for free, and all these other different facilities. It was like being in a kind of multi-million-dollar apartment with offices right next to it, in a separate section. And you could always hang out there. But the thing is, a lot of those things are to get you to stay in the office longer hours, so your social life is revolving around work, and you're used to a certain living standard that might not be reflected in your salary or how much free time you actually have. So just look out for those red flags. Just really think through carefully. Don't think, I'm going to be working 80 hours a week, but there is that food that they make for us. I mean, it's not that big a deal. I'm one of those people, if you've been watching my channel, I'm very big on autonomy and self-sufficiency and not being too dependent on the company. You want to use the company you're working for to build your thing, whatever that would be. If they're paying you a higher salary and you're working long hours and you don't have time to do your side hustle because you're working in tech, like for Amazon or Facebook, but at least you can invest all that money so you have your freedom by retiring early, for example. And you don't want to be like, oh, well, you're getting all the social status benefits of the job, but you're not actually building anything on the side, or some freedom on the side. So when they get rid of you and you get fired, you're going to lose those fancy meals, those yoga sessions, whatever nice things, all the benefits that came with it, because you didn't actually build anything. You were so dependent on them, not just for the job, but for your entire lifestyle. Here it says, after the lockdowns ended, the tech stock had plummeted, interest rates had increased throughout 2022. This prompted an efficiency drive by many companies as investors demanded profitability over growth at all costs. So what it's kind of saying here is that tech stocks went down and interest rates went higher, which means that Companies are going to invest less because the cost of borrowing money to invest is going to cost more, like the interest rates going up, of course. And then it says here, there's an efficiency drive by many companies as investors demanded profitability over growth at all costs. So this is the thing, right? Investors can dictate to a certain extent the direction, of course, of the company because they want to get a return on their investment. And a lot of these companies were growing quite quickly, hiring more people, having more people in each of their departments, new business initiatives. But investors were saying, well, where's the actual profit? You're just growing and growing, but where's the profit coming from? And this is what ended up happening. And employees, people like you who might be watching this, you're just trying to do your job and you're dealing with more of the pressure. Here's an employee that says the pressure across the industry, the tech industry, to do more with less. There's lots of uncertainty. Someone says at Amazon, there's lots of pressure to perform the job of multiple people at the mercy of ruthless middle management. And I want to make more videos, actually. I'm going to make a note of it on middle management because it's such a big thing right now where middle management, some companies, like I've covered before at HSBC, some of the middle management are losing their jobs. Some of them they're really clinging on to their job with their dear life. And sometimes that means putting more pressure on the more junior employees. Like, oh, you have to do more work. We have to show results for our management, the senior management above us. So they end up basically being quite psychopathic and worse to deal with than some of the senior management above them because they're the middle management know they're kind of not needed. And particularly during the lockdown period where people are working from home. Like I remember working from home. And I'd go to my, I wouldn't have many questions for my direct manager. Like my manager and my manager's manager, I had very few questions for them because had enough experience at that point. So I'd check in one or two things with them, or just to be nice, I'd get their input for one or two things, but there wasn't tons of questions from my end. And sometimes they'd give me negative feedback about that. Oh, you have to ask more questions. You have to speak up more. And it's like, well, I don't really have many questions. When I do ask, to be honest. If I don't know something, I'll just say, oh, I'm not clear on this. But I didn't have a lot of questions. And the point is that middle management were exposed. If anyone was exposed, it was middle management. They're not really needed in many cases. There's so many layers of management. And what ends up happening is companies, to keep people in their roles, and when there isn't not a lot of progression, they will essentially give them these fancy job titles. Like, let's just say someone's in their mid to late 30s and they can't make it to the senior management. They're too experienced to basically be a low-level employee. So there's almost like a pointless layer of middle management where they're busybodies, they're monitoring the junior staff, maybe giving some useful advice, but a lot of it is not needed. They're just there to kind of get a salary bump and not do a lot of extra work for it, and they'll delegate maybe some of their work to you. It's quite kind of a funny dynamic because I was happy to get out that situation because the next company I went to, because I had enough experience, I didn't have to deal with that. It was just me and then senior management, and I had to manage 2 employees, but it wasn't like tons of work. Rather than being more junior and then you've got like 2 managers managing you and they have different opinions and sometimes they change their role in relation to you, it just becomes a bit ridiculous. So middle management got exposed more than anyone else that they're not really needed. They just need you back in the office so they can justify that they're doing some work by training you. And lots of the times the training isn't great. A Google manager said there is more pressure for individuals to be better in their roles, and there is much more aggressive performance management happening these days. And I covered this in finance industry too, not just tech, right? This Google guy is saying we're being asked to do more for less money, right? More with less time. And before I move on, what he's talking about performance management, I covered in another video at a major investment bank, Citibank. I'm sure you've seen the logo, you've heard about it. What they've done is, because they're going through a massive transformation process, which means renovating their tech department to do more work through AI, through automation, or even before that, just make things more efficient because they're such a big bloated bank with so many employees and they're doing such large layoffs. On top of that, they want to get rid of additional employees by completely revamping how they do performance reviews. So essentially, when they have a curve of employee performance, which means how many employees are we allowed to say are high performers, mid-level performers, and low performers, they essentially said we can only put maybe let's just go from, as an example, from 10% of our employees being defined as high performers, only 5%. Instead of 30% being in the middle, we'll just say 20%, and then everyone else will be a low performer or doing the bare average. So they've redefined what a good performance is, and they're essentially pushing people into lower and lower performance metrics. As low performers, it's easier to fire them and justify that legally when you're giving someone a layoff. There's a performance issue, you're not good at the job, and we're making some cuts due to profit and things like that. They're basically revamping what is a good performer, right? And this is what I mean. The difficult things when you're working at these major companies is like an authoritarian dictatorship. They can make up the rules any moment. One day you have to be loyal to the company. The next day they can fire you with a layoff and come up with an excuse because they change the way they measure performance to say your performance isn't good enough. Here it says, the Google employee said that Silicon Valley tech companies are being more ruthless and more efficient, and the current political climate gives them the green light to do it openly. And then all it says here is that the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer from Morgan Stanley, says that now the masks are off, right? So essentially what they're trying to say is that what they want to do is, and I don't want to bring in politics too much into this video, but if you've got Elon Musk, who fired tons of Twitter employees who are just like DEI hires, girl bosses, and I've covered this in other videos, and they weren't adding a lot of productivity, they were implementing a lot of these censorship and high standards of control of what people can and can't say, what's going to hurt someone's emotions, things like that. The whole point is when those people get fired and Elon Musk shows how he can renovate a company and not get caught up in all the lawsuits and all the political correctness of firing too many people of one demographic or the other companies like Google and Microsoft are going to think the same, like, okay, cool, well, we don't have to play by these politically correct rules anymore. We can just fire all the unproductive people. We don't have to hire people on the basis of gender or race equality, things like that. Then it says here at TikTok, so we went through Microsoft, Google, TikTok, so many companies going through this. TikTok, their pressure to perform jumped last year. The company directed managers to deliver more low scores in performance reviews, leading to PIPs, performance improvement plans, and eventual exits in the form of layoffs, right? So at the same time, 6 current and former employees reached out to this website, this journalist at Business Insider. Their goals have become much harder to hit. The goals are unattainable. And this is, again, going back to what I mentioned, that's what's going on in finance to a certain extent. They're just setting the performance standards so high, it's like, how are you going to meet them? It's kind of impossible. So what ends up happening is people just get pushed out the company, and then you're just dealing with a very difficult dynamic. Like, how are you going to survive there if you can't meet your performance metrics? Lastly, it says here, founders aren't sugarcoating it. Someone who runs a recruiting forum for tech talent. I've had a few co-founders of tech companies tell employees they aren't working hard enough. And if you're not all in, no hard feelings, we can give you severance, but we can't slow down. We need you to work late nights in the office, work weekends in the office, people crashing out in the office. It's real, right? So it's not just the big tech firms, the smaller firms too, startups and things like that, fintech firms that are putting people under a lot of pressure to survive and stay in their job. It is quite a difficult dynamic, and one thing I teach and help my clients do is navigate these very difficult political environments at work, right? It's a 12-week coaching program I offer, link in description, to help you build power, pay, and freedom. How to outsmart office politics, increase your salary, take control of your career through a job search. Not only Microsoft is cutting underperformers, we see Google, we see TikTok. I've covered it, other companies in other videos, right? You can't afford to be good anymore. You have to be much better than that. You need a clear strategy of dealing with a lot of the office politics to survive in your career and succeed. I'll teach you how to read corporate signals, pivot early, and secure your next role before 2026. As I say, there is a Black Friday sale on right now. It's 20% discount. This will be the lowest price you'd ever get the coaching for. The prices will increase in 2026. So it's up to you. If you want to get started with me, let me know. We learned from some examples here. We know what's going on in the tech industry. It could get rough next year, as would seem obvious. Let me know if you want to work together. Link in description, and I'll see you in the next video.